Clap now, you won't clap at the end. Thank you for coming back today. I've done more than one of these orientations through the years, and I was always alarmed when someone didn't come back the second day. It was like, I knew we shouldn't have told them about that dissertation on the first night. Really, it's great to see you this morning, and I'm happy that this many of us have been able to be together. This particular orientation is great because it allows you to get to know each other. You can get acquainted with faculty and staff with whom you'll be working. You can also capture the spirit of this place. But most importantly, we have you here to set you up for success. And some of the tools you've already heard about include Canvas, how to use Google Documents, how to navigate the library, and how you can use collaborative assignments within your courses. So lots of tools for you this weekend. So that brings me to talking about expectations. Excuse me just a second. I can't see you all over there, so I'm looking to get eye contact with you. So many of you are educators, and I know that you have found as educators, when you let students know what they are expected to do, they usually hit the target a lot better than when you just say, write a paper. Students want to know what is expected. We need structure, we need boundaries. And so I'm going to start my presentation by talking about some of the expectations we have for writing in this program. That's my role in this program, is working with writing. Tone is a term that encompasses lots of different aspects. And if Colton were up here, he could address this very well. He teaches English. And so when you think about your writing, begin with, who is my audience? In your coursework, for the most part, your audience will be your instructor. You'll be writing assignments that will be evaluated by an individual, or sometimes a team of individuals. But also, when you are in graduate work at the doctoral level, you have joined a community of scholars. And so you need to think about your writing is going to be read by other people who are part of the academic community. Now, how cool is this? You get your dissertation published, and someone in a doctoral program down the road is going to cite you in their dissertation. Wouldn't that just be great? Think about that today. You are moving on up, okay? So think about your audience. And as you are thinking about that audience, remember that you are writing in a more formal style than you may have written in previous contexts. So I would use this formal tone to talk about how most of the time you're writing in third person from a more objective point of view. You will be asked in some assignments to write from first person. I learned that. But most of the time you're going to be writing from a more objective position when you're looking at research. You also want to think about your vocabulary level. Instead of using a 3 or 4 letter word, expand your vocabulary to maybe a 7 or 8 letter word. Remember, we are very cognizant about non-biased writing. So that is something that you'll be incorporating, that awareness into your writing. Avoiding contractions. A formal tone says, I did not, researchers did not find, that kind of language. And I say avoid slang. I have read some of the funniest idioms not idiots, idioms, in papers. I'm like, who would put that in a formal paper? They were happy as a lark to be doing something. I'm like, no, not today. And then I would also see what I call text speak. Because has more than 2 letters, folks. But I keep seeing that popping up in formal letters in the graduate courses that I write. So please keep in mind the tone of your writing is going to be different, most likely, than what you have written in other contexts. Now, you have done academic writing in your undergraduate work, of course, and in your master's program. But remember, you're moving up a level. And so keep all of that in mind. That brings me to this topic of integrity that Dr. Kearns mentioned, and she actually showed you how we do integrity checks on our campus in our program. But as a researcher, it is incumbent upon you to accurately cite your sources. So accuracy is a part of integrity, and always giving credit to your sources. It is tempting at times to use other words or ideas as your own. Don't go down that path. Give credit to the source that you are using. And then the other aspect that I would mention about graduate level expectations is critical thinking. Critical thinking is something that we are always striving for. As educators, we want our students to be critical thinkers. And so those of you, again, with an education background are very familiar with Benjamin Bloom and his taxonomy. And so at the upper level of his original taxonomy, which has been revised, it's like anything that's over 50 years old, we seem to have to revise these days. But in his older taxonomy, there were 3 higher levels. And I like to explain these with a visual. When you are analyzing something, you are picking it apart, okay? Imagine you have a little flower, daisy with petals, and you are just picking it apart, okay? That's what you're doing when you're analyzing. Then when you move up to that next level of synthesis, you're putting the daisy back together. You're putting those petals back on. You are pulling together that information that you have been gleaning from your sources. So pulling back together. And then the evaluation involves what I refer to as weighing. It's like, well, I've read this from this particular source, but then I've also read this from another source. And so you're constantly weighing and using value judgments on what information you are interpreting or incorporating into your writing. So think about those levels of expectation. You will definitely include factual information, which is lower level knowledge in Bloom's taxonomy, certainly, but much of your writing will be at those higher levels. And you will hear Dr. Penley and Dr. Richardson and Dr. Kearns talking about synthesizing all the time. When I think of a synthesizer in music, there is a close relationship there, because what does a synthesizer do? It pulls together lots of different music streams, right? Different musical abilities. So what you're doing is you are synthesizing that information. And then there's an acronym that I am very tied to. Well, Dr. Case told you last night that her favorite acronym is DEAL. You all remember that? Okay. And when we started this program, and that was the acronym that was chosen for this program, I thought, well, how cool is that? Because I'd grown up watching Monty Hall on Let's Make a Deal, right? Okay. And so I was thinking, well, that's really clever. And then I thought, APA. No game show. Sorry, people. No game show for APA in the title. But I did think of one that's close. How about jeopardy. Let me just say, you will be in academic jeopardy if you avoid using APA. There you go. So think about how important APA is going to be to this process of writing for you. Some people ask me, well, why do you use APA? I used MLA, or I learned Turabian or Chicago. In our field, most of the research that you will be looking at will draw from the social sciences, and that is the style and format that's used in the social sciences. It's pretty obvious. The Psychological Association, the American Psychological Association. So we're drawing from a structure and system that they have incorporated. The manual that you'll be using looks like this, and I hope all of you already have one of these or will be getting one very soon. And we are in the 7th edition of APA. Some of you may be familiar with APA from using it in prior courses, but we have moved into the 7th edition. Now we will all remember 2020 for lots of things. But I will remember 2020 as when the newest APA edition came out, because it really rocked my world. I had been using APA 6th edition for 10 years, the 10 years it was available, but think about how our databases and technology and digital capabilities had changed. And so APA had to keep up with the times. So we are using APA 7 in this program. In talking about the APA manual, I have listed a website there for you, and you will probably be going back to this orientation course to access different items. So this PowerPoint is there for you. So these are linked right in the PowerPoint. So the APA website is right there for you, and it has lots of information there, more than you probably would want to scroll through. Our text, I call it our text, it is the text in one of the courses I teach, has 12 chapters. Have I read all 12 chapters? You bet. Am I expecting you to read all 12? Maybe not. But if you can't, make yourself read all 12 chapters, please read the 4 in the middle, okay? Chapter 4, whoops. Got so excited it jumped. Chapter 4, 6, 8, and 9. Those chapters will be your best friends. Okay, so stick with those. There's also a great tutorial that's available through the APA website. So if you are unfamiliar with APA at all, or you want just a quick brush up on the new system, it's right there for you as well. There's also a short link for a YouTube video. The tutorial will take you maybe 8 or 10 minutes. The little YouTube video is 3.5 minutes, very short. And then I like to think about my dad when I come to this last example. My dad watched lots of baseball games when I was growing up. And he would get a little frustrated when the pitcher would throw a ball kind of, outside the plate. And I've heard him so many times yell at the TV, have an idea, okay? Have an idea, people. At least look at page 61 in your APA manual for what a paper looks like, okay? It has the title page, it has the body of the paper, and it has the reference list page, okay? So have an idea and look at that one short section of the APA manual. So during the rest of my presentation, I'm going to touch on 5 different areas to set you up for success. I'll be talking about general format of papers, the title page, the section labels and headings, the in-text citations, and your reference list. Okay, so I'm going to touch on those all in the next 30 minutes. Trust me, we'll get done, all right? Starting with the general format of your papers. This is the format that you will follow in every course in this program. You'll use a 12-point Times New Roman font. You will double space consistently. Everything is double spaced. Almost everything is double spaced in APA. There's only like 1 or 2 exceptions. You'll use a 1-inch margin on all 4 sides. The left margin is flush left. The right margin is ragged. I received a paper last week where the student had centered every page. I was like, this is not a poem, dear. So I didn't put that in my comment to her. I just said, please use left justified margin and ragged right margin. But I thought it. Okay, you're going to indent your paragraphs 1/2 inch. There is 1 space between the initials of your authors. Some of your authors will only have a first initial, but some will have 2. There's a space there. Page numbers go in the upper right corner, starting with the title page. In APA, the title page is the first page. I always thought that was a great idea. You wrote the page, why shouldn't it get credit? So, title page, page 1. And then the easy way to remember numbers, if you go above 1 digit, you use numbers. If you only have single digit numbers, you use words. So 1 through 9 are generally words. 10 and above, you use numbers. There are a few exceptions. Don't worry about those right now. You'll read about them in your APA manual. Let's move on to how you set up your title page. This is a screenshot from the APA website, and this is how you will set up your title page again in every course you take in the program. You'll see where the page number is. The title is in bold print, bold type, and then your name's there, your school, the course, the instructor, and the date. This is the expectation that your instructors will have for when you are submitting your papers. That brings us to our section labels and headings. All of the section label headings are in bold type. So you can see the abstract is in bold type, references, bold type, theoretical framework, which will be a part of your chapter 2. And in case you want a quick reference there, you don't even have to open the book to find this. Just inside the front cover, it gives you the levels of heading. So you don't even have to get into the text itself, just right there in the front cover. So your levels of headings, most of you will use 3 levels of headings in your proposals and in your dissertation. Some of you may use 4 or 5, but I've just listed the 3 most commonly used ones here for you. Now let's go to talking about the in-text citations. This is where we're going to spend most of our time because this is the area that tends to give us the most problems. As Dr. Kern showed you, these are the areas that are flagged and turn it in. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about in-text citations. The standard of integrity in the academic community is that you give credit to the sources you use. That's the standard of academic integrity that any academic community should follow. So you are going to be doing 3 different things. You're going to be using information in 3 different ways: summarizing, quoting, and paraphrasing. When you are summarizing, you are taking a body of information and distilling it into a manageable paragraph or even sentence. So you're taking a large group of information and summarizing it into a more succinct document or succinct form. You could be summarizing an article. You could be summarizing the findings of a report. The student in D1 who is looking at problem-based learning skills, problem-based learning building critical thinking skills in her research. And so she has looked at dozens and dozens of articles that support the finding that problem-based learning builds critical thinking skills. And so she is summarizing, she's taking lots of information and distilling it into, like I said, a paragraph or a sentence, or even just a citation. So you're going to be summarizing information. You are going to be quoting information when the source says something better than you can. That's sort of your rule of thumb. When the source said something so amazing or so emphatic or so important that you want to use those exact words, that's when you're going to use your quotes. And so you are going to be using the exact words from the source. And I've given you a couple of places to look there for assistance in your APA manual, where there are direct quotations cited in the text. And then in APA, we have what are called block quotes. Block quotes are longer quotes of 40 words or more, and they're called block quotes because they're set up, they look like a square or a rectangle in the middle of your page when you are using it. They're indented, every line is indented, so they are set apart from your normal left margin. And so when you are using quotes, you must include your source there. And I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. And that brings us to the third skill that you'll be using, which is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is different than summarizing. In paraphrasing, you follow the exact same progression of the information as it's originally presented. Okay? In summary, you're taking a large group or body of information and distilling it. When you're paraphrasing, you're laying the information and how you want to say it side by side and following right along with it. Many of us learned the 23rd Psalm a long time ago. And the way that I learned the 23rd Psalm, it started with, you can say it with me if you like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Okay? I learned it that way a long, long time ago. But a few years ago, a man by the name of Eugene Peterson came out with The Message. How many of you are familiar with The Message? Okay. The Message is a paraphrase of the original texts and original manuscripts of Scripture. And so when I open the Message to Psalm 23, rather than it saying, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, listen to the first 2 or 3 verses of how Peterson paraphrases, okay? God, my shepherd, I don't need a thing. You have bedded me down in lush meadows. You find me quiet pools to drink from. True to your word, you let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction. Peterson's taking verse by verse from the original source he had and paraphrasing it. So when you're paraphrasing, remember this. Use it, don't abuse it. When you are summarizing, use it, don't abuse it. When you are quoting, use it, but don't abuse it. When you're using someone else's words and ideas and their research, you give credit to them. Now, the temptation in today's society is to copy and paste. Copy and paste is a great tool, but I really don't like it as a writing instructor. It's too easy to take out that source, isn't it? Don't be tempted beyond what you can bear. You need to be sure and cite your source every time you can. So when we are using paraphrase, I've included an original sentence from a research article. And this one reads, working in teams creates a culture of collaboration and cooperation and helps others to grow. The original statement from the article. My paraphrase is the second one there. Rather than saying working in teams, what did I use? Teamwork. And instead of using the word creates a culture, what did I change? Fosters a culture. And rather than saying collaboration and cooperation, how did I change that? Paraphrase that. Okay, participative decision making. All right, isn't that what collaboration and cooperation is? All right, and then helps others to grow. How did I paraphrase that? Leads to professional growth. Okay, this is a challenge because you are wanting to use your own words, but you must maintain the original meaning of what the source intended. So that's the tricky part. I'm going to show you 3 tools that I use to help me with paraphrasing. One is dictionary.com. You can go and put a term in there and you can pull up synonyms and antonyms for that word. The synonyms help you the most when you're trying to say something a little bit differently. So use that source. There's also thesaurus.com. The source gives you many different options for using words with similar meanings. And then I've also found a tool online called paraphraseonline.com, and you put the original sentence in one box, and then there's a little spinner in the middle, and then it gives you a paraphrase on the right-hand side. Sometimes the paraphrases aren't that good, but it just helps me give me an idea about how to say something differently. So, you know, that might work for you, might be a good help for you. And then I included another example from your APA manual for how to use a long paraphrase with a single in-text citation. So there's an example there for you because sometimes that gets very cumbersome, and I've had students ask about that. So in every APA citation, every in-text citation, there are 2 components. The author, who's responsible for this work, and the date. When was it published? Here we go with the story. I opened my garage door the early part of the summer. No, it was fall, sorry. And I heard the mockingbird that lives in the big tree across the street from me in my neighbor's yard. And you'll never believe what he was saying. He was doing this. Who win? Who win? Who win? I was like, that's the APA mockingbird. It's who and when. Okay, people, you get to do it with me. All right, here we go. Ready? Leave your mask on. It goes like this. Who, when, who, when, who, when. Every time you want to make a citation, that mockingbird should be right here on your shoulder. Ophelia, you will never forget this. None of you will. Because it is so true. I mean, who trained that mockingbird that way? God did. And it was like a light bulb for me. It was like, okay, the next time I do orientation, I'm using that. So it's who, when, every time. Who wrote it and when did they write it? Okay? Now, if you are quoting, if you are using word for word a quotation, you have to include the page number. This will get you in trouble faster on Turn It In than anything else. Because Turn It In, I don't know if anyone has told them about the mockingbird, but Turn It In looks for a page number as soon as it sees quotation marks. If there are quotation marks, there better be a page number real close, okay? So keep in mind, for direct quotes, you use the author, the date, and the page number, okay? Got that. Now, this is one of the great simplifications from 6th edition APA, if some of you have used this. But in this new 7th edition, we use a simplified citation style. So for when you have more than 2 authors, all you do is use the first author's name followed by et al. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. This is language class today. Et al. Is Latin for and others. Now, I'll remind you, give you a little reminder how to keep this in the top of your brain. My mom's little brother used to want to go with her on a date when she was going out with another farm boy from a neighboring farm. And she would always tell him, Georgie, 3's a crowd. 3's a crowd in APA, okay? You only use 2 authors. If there are more than 2 authors, it's a crowd. And so you use the first author name et al. And as you can see, following these simple steps will help you avoid problems with plagiarism. They will benefit you greatly when you're using Turn It In. We have 2 different kinds of citations in APA. We have parenthetical citations and we have narrative citations. The parenthetical is referred to that way because the citation is in parentheses. That's why it's called parenthetical. And you can see the example there where Cox and Swain is included in parentheses. I'm going to use the same information, but I'm going to use narrative form. Narrative form is like you're still telling the story. You are including the author name as a part of the sentence. So you can see it says Cox and Swain 2018 is in parentheses. One other item to note there is when you are using a parenthetical citation, you use the ampersand sign. When you are using the narrative, you use and written out, A-N-D. Some of you will be using, or many of you, all of you, will be using secondary sources. And one of the things to remember here is that you always refer to the work that you're using. You don't go to the end notes in a chapter and find the journal article that the person was originally quoted in. You use the source that you are actually working with. And the reason for that, a couple of reasons, but one reason is the person who was using that original source may not have been accurate. Think of that. They may not have had this orientation. So you want to give credit to the source that you're using and verifying that it was the accuracy in the source that you had accessed. And so you use a little phrase, as cited in. Henderson, 2010, as cited in. And then again, there's another place that I refer you to for primary and secondary sources there. Let's go to our last main point, which is the reference list. And the reference list should be a one-to-one correspondence between your citations in your paper or your proposal or dissertation and the list that's at the last. Yes?
Sorry, I had a question about the primary and secondary.
You may have to take your mask.
Sorry, I had a question about the secondary sources.
Yes.
Would it be okay to go to the reference list and go to the source and then find the information, or would, like, from the actual primary source, like, can we still do that?
I would be very impressed with that if you did. That would be great. In fact, that's a good way to find other articles related to your topic. So yes, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. But many students don't take the time to do that, or they maybe are not able to access that original source. But yes, we want you to use as many original sources as you can. So yes, very good. Thank you for asking me that. So the goals of your reference list are accuracy and accessibility. We've talked about accuracy. Accessibility, that refers to anyone reading your research should be able to access very easily the sources that you have used. So one of the things that we do in 7th edition APA is we leave all URLs and DOIs as links. That way the reader can click on that link and go immediately to the article. So keep in mind, you want to make it as easy for another researcher to look at the sources you used, and that's what you're trying to do in your reference list. There are 4 components of a reference: the author, date, the title, and the source. And there are a couple of terms that you will hear and read about in APA: sentence case and title case. Title case is what most of us have grown up with, where you capitalize the important words in a title. And so some of you may have read Lord of the Rings, you would capitalize the L and the R. In sentence case, APA would use lowercase, only capitalizing the first letter of the first word and then the first word following internal punctuation, such as a colon or semicolon. So when I first started using APA, it just kind of made me cringe to write the title of the book without capitalizing it properly. But that's the style in APA. So keep that in mind. And that brings us to an example that I want us to look at. The example is, this article is actually linked for your reading in Canvas for this weekend and for your first course. But this is an article called Servant Leaders as Change Agents. And this is what the citation looks like at the top of the journal. So I'm just pulling from that. And then this is what the reference would look like. This is the actual form it would take in my reference list at the back of the paper. I'm going to spend a few minutes here dissecting this reference. You'll notice that the author's last name is included and initials. I don't care that the author's first name is Eunice or Gladys or whatever it is. It's just an E or a G. Okay, just initials for first and middle names. The authors are separated by commas, and before the last author, you use the ampersand sign with retaining that comma before the ampersand. In the new APA 7th edition, you include every author up to 20 authors. If you have more than 20 authors, there is a shortcut, and you can look that up in your APA manual. We want everyone given credit in APA 7. So you have the who, then you have the year, the when, that goes in parentheses, followed by a period. And then there's the title of the article. Is it in sentence case or title case? Sentence case, all right, followed by a period. And then you have the where. It's from the Journal of Social Change, Volume 10, Issue 1, pages 1 through 18. Journal of Social Change, is it in title case or sentence case? Title case, okay? And italics. Journals are special. When you are published in a peer-reviewed journal, you have arrived. And so that journal title is impressive. So think of that. You italicize it and you use title case. The volume number is italicized because it is considered part of the title. Come on, these are psychologists. You didn't chuckle. They're checking everything. So volume number is in italics, and then you don't put P or PP, none of that, just 1 through 18 for the page numbers, followed by a period. Now this will simplify things for you. It's who, period. When, period. What, period. Where, period. You got it? All 4 components, you include those, followed by a period. All right. Now, we included the URL, and you can see, this is the DOI for this one, not the URL, and this is the standard format we use for DOIs. I asked what DOI was in a class the other day, and someone said date of entry. That's true. It was in a kinesiology class. But we are using DOI as digital object identifier. Okay, so this is the standard form, and you can see it's linked by the underline, and it is not followed by a period. We don't follow the URL or the DOI with the period because it could interfere with accessibility. Okay, so who, when, what, where. Who, period, when, period, what, period, where, period. And then your URL or DOI. Okay? As I wrap up, I'm going to give you a little roadmap. You can use all types of sources, and you will use all types of sources in your research. But these are the 8 most commonly used sources that I have read in student papers and proposals over the last 1.5 years. And so I pulled from their writing, and these are the sources that you will need to know how to cite properly. And so I've listed them for you right here. Starting with a basic journal article, which we've just looked at, and then wrapping up with a web page. Web pages weren't even included in APA 6. We've come a long ways in the past 10 years with those digital accessibility. You all have been so polite and receptive, And I hope you're not in overload. Most of the time when you've gone to a session after you've eaten, you're ready for a nap. I didn't see anyone sleeping, but I'm going to make sure you know how to call the APA hummingbird, mockingbird. Are you ready? On the count of 3, we're going to do it 3 times. You will never forget this. Who, when, who, when, who, when. You're going to make it. You are going to make it. Oh. Well, do you have a question, Ian?
I do. Going back to the narrative citation and the example of Cox and Swain, I know that's, referring to an article that would be in the reference list from 2018. What if hypothetically you had 2 articles from Cox and Swain, both written in 2018?
Ian, I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well in here, but if you will email Pete Broyles.
Can you hear me better now?
If you'll yell.
Yeah. You want me to repeat the question?
Helen, if you can hear, we have someone sitting by the owl. Go ahead.
So in the narrative citation and the example of Cox and Swain of 2018, what if you hypothetically they had written 2 articles in the same year? Does it matter to differentiate which one you're referencing?
Is he asking about an article with the same year, same authors? There is a way to deal with that in APA, and the first one you refer to as like 2019A, and then the second one would be 2019B. And I had a proposal I read a couple weeks ago that went all the way to G. A lot of times when you are using a primary researcher, that will happen. So great, thank you for helping me hear that. All right, I'm done.